Welcome everyone to the CSA Cloud Trust Summit 2025. I am Gagandeep Singh, Vice President with Salesforce and responsible for leading the global cloud compliance. And I'll be talking today about the compliance automation revolution that the CSPs or the SaaS providers are going through. So, let me talk about, first of all, what the challenge is. Like, what are we trying to solve using automation, or why do we even need automation? So, over the last 5 years, all of you who have been in this industry or have been in the engineering side, you might have seen a lot of requests coming in, a lot of regulatory requests coming in. What that means is that we had SOP 2 and ISO, which were globally accepted a couple of years back. But over the last 5 years, we have seen so many more requirements come up from each of the regional governments. So, what that means is, let me take some examples. What you see on the screen are some of the key certifications that we are aiming for, but there are so many more. So, let's take an example of USA. So we have FedRAMP, which is what you require to sell within the government. But now you also have StateRAMP, TextRAMP, and the California privacy requirements. So a lot many other requirements coming in. Canada has its own triple C that has come up. Similarly, if you look into Asia, you see that there's Japan has ISMAP, which is one of the most strenuous certifications out there. And then India is coming up with its own testing requirements and financial sector requirements. Similarly, Singapore, Philippines has recently announced a Data Privacy Act. So Asia is catching up. Saudi has its own requirements and it's making a mandatory requirement for all CSPs to operate there. Similarly, with Australia. And then Europe is the most complex of them all. It has, at an EU level, EU COC, EUCS is being discussed, NIS2, and each of the countries also have their own requirements. Like Spain has ENS, Italy has ACN, Germany has C5, and so on and so forth. So, with the current political scenario and the geopolitical scenario, we see that this requirement is going to only go up and not fade out. So, in this scenario, what do we do? The teams, the engineering teams, the CSPs, they're struggling with thousands of requirements, thousands of certifications and audits that they have to go through. And it's now coming to a tipping point where it will become very difficult to maintain this going forward. So, how do we solve it? And that's what we'll be talking about today. Um, while automation and are as good as they are, we need some kind of standardization to happen at the CSP level or at the engineering level. So I'll talk about the common controls framework that we are coming up first and how it's helping us standardize and prepare for the maturity through automation and AI. So what you see on the screen is a graphical representation. Basically, left hand side are all the requirements that we are going through. So around 10,000, sorry, standards that we are going through, around 10,000 requirements in all. And we have standardized and rationalized them into a future state or the CCF, which will come up to be around 350 controls. So 10,000 requirement, 350 controls. Now, that does not mean that we are cutting down on the controls or the requirements, but we are doing a one-to-many mapping. What that means is we are setting up the controls in a way that they meet multiple requirements. So it's not cutting down. It's not like chopping away some work, but basically standardizing and rationalizing them so that we have a single set of controls that can satisfy multiple requirements. So going forward, talking about it as a whole. So from a common controls framework perspective, that's not the only thing. What I spoke about is the first vertical, which is like standardized set of controls. I already spoke about most of it, but um, basically we need to come up with something that the engineering teams can latch onto, they can understand, and that's where we want to rationalize these controls. Now, how do we ensure that the engineering teams understand those controls? So they already had some controls to work upon, get it, like they were a lot of it, but now we are consolidating it, but that's not it. Within this framework, we will also give them, referring to point number two, the implementation guidance on how to implement those controls in their specific environment. So we are customizing those controls and the implementations to get them exact requirements on how to implement those in your particular environments, and then also giving them test procedures, the evidence samples or the RFI list that they will be asking, and the responsibility matrix. Now, does that what does all of this mean? So test procedure is basically, once they have implemented the control, they also get to view how the auditors will be coming in and asking them what kind of testing they'll be performing, and then what kind of evidence they'll be asking for. So that will give them a 360-degree view into how to implement a control, what will the auditors or the internal assessors looking for, and then what kind of evidence they need to give. So that reduces a lot of back and forth where engineering doesn't understand what they need to do, and they give us anything or everything, and the internal folks are figuring out what to, like churning through the evidence, then going back, then cleaning it, then sending it out to the auditors, and so on and so forth. So that reduces all of that ambiguity that is there. Then the third one is control alignment with risk and policy. So as I was mentioning, the idea is not just to have the controls there to get certifications, but eventually it is all about like upscaling or uplifting the security, and that's what this does. So all the controls along with the requirements are also mapped to the internal policies and standards, and also to the risk assessment, so it gives a holistic coverage. Fourth one, shared tooling and services. I will be covering this in the next slide as well, but for us to completely like take advantage of automation and AI, we need to have a common set of tooling and services, and it should be adopted throughout. So I'll be talking about that and the driver subscriber model in the upcoming slides. And the fifth is one of the most key components. So why we can do all of this, one of the things that it gets stuck at is the audit strategies. You still have multiple auditors across the globe that need to audit you. So with this, with the framework, we are able to consolidate those audits. What that means is test once is used many times. So we test a control once, we are able to share the evidences amongst the auditors, or the different regions of auditors. So that's the strategy that comes along with CCF. Talking about a little bit more characteristics and statistics across CCF and how it is implemented. So you can see the step approach that is on the screen now. So what you saw, around 350 controls, are the total set of controls that we have translated to, or we have standardized and rationalized to. But what that means is that some part of the CSP and your orgs as well don't need to have all those certification. It depends upon product to product and like what product is being sold in which market. So that's why our mandate will be to have the CCF baseline, which is based on SOC 2 and ISO, which are universally accepted, and there are around 140 controls. But as as product teams need more certification, we will approach them incrementally. So this also helps us when newer regulations or newer certifications are coming on board. So for example, if there's an update to ISO, or there's an update to PCI standard, or there's a new standard or regulation that comes up in Europe, we know exactly, we will map it to CCF, to our existing set of controls. We will exactly know what the delta is, and that's what we will ask the engineering teams to implement. It will not mean that they are implementing or accepting everything. They're not going through the audits again. They're not going through the whole set of implementation exercise again. So this is the advantage that comes with the CCF approach, with the common framework approach. This is a similar story in a different graphic set. So as you can see that if you have CCF baseline, which is like, look at the product, it's going through the CSAT baseline funnel. You have baseline. Then if you need to get SMAP, it's around 30 to 40% of more work. IRAP is 50 to 60% of more compliance effort. C5, 30%. ENS, 10 to 15%. These are all indicative, but this just to give you an idea that with this, we know exactly the amount of effort that the teams will have to put in to be SMAP compliant, to be IRAP compliant, or whatever certification we are looking for. So this approach, this rationalized approach, this gives us a lot of flexibility and visibility into what kind of effort we are looking for if we have to go for a particular market or particular regulation. So one of the key factors or the backbones of CCF plus how we will identify uh, the compliance process is through the use of the driver subscriber model. What that means is going from bottom to top, we have split the controls and the implementation into two buckets. One is the enterprise set of controls, which basically include your HR, people resources controls, vendor management, IT, security governance, all those kind of controls, which are central teams, have been clubbed together. And then the engineering teams or the product teams will have their own set of controls that they need to comply with. How does this help? This basically reduces the toil that the engineering team has to put in for each certification by almost 70% because they're only looking at their controls or the ones that they own, which means that reduces it to be out of 140, around 30% of the control is something that fall with the business units or with the engineering teams, and rest of it with the enterprise or the central teams. That means that we only have to test them once, while the business units can use that same report or same audit and get a certification. So they don't have to go back to multiple teams to get their certifications. Okay. Tooling strategy. Um, as I was mentioning, one of the key factors is also to have a consolidated tooling strategy. So what we all suffer from is that we have very disparate set of tooling within one organization. And what we are doing is that we are working towards having a common tooling strategy so we can understand that these are, and we'll work with our security partners to understand what those tools are. And we will work with engineering to understand why they cannot adopt a particular tool and help them on board to those centralized tools. And what value it brings for engineering is in the long run, it's definitely reduces the ambiguity. It centralizes the data source, the data collection, logging, all of that. Um, Enhances the effectiveness because if everything is standardized, we can have a much better approach to it. And then, of course, like that ends up having much better visibility and much better support tooling along with it. So this is also the central theme of what we do. Okay, now coming to the maturity or the enhancement through automation and AI. So now that we have done this and we have set a ground rule of how things will be working, what we are looking for is that compliance has been embedded into the pipeline, into these life cycle. Now we need to start automating. Automation and AI agents, I'll be talking about them in a bit, but basically first is to automate those daily tasks. So all of your periodic activities, the reviews and everything that we do, the idea is to automate them after we have standardized and rationalized and we have a set tooling to follow, and then top it up with AI agents to support those particular activities. So I'll be taking a case study in for the AI agent in the next slide, but just to talk about this slide. So embedded compliance I spoke about. Zero touch audits basically means that we don't have to go and collect evidences at each point of time, and we have a pipeline which can smoothly flow the evidences and the audit process through. Real time or near real time control monitoring is once we have the inflow of the evidences and the supporting evidences for compliance, we can actually build automation to give us much more transparent and um, um, clear picture in a much lesser time. So it can also be built like every hourly update or half an hourly update or even once per day update, but we can have like near real time control monitoring. And compliance agent, I'm going to be talking about how they can be built on top of these automation to even further enhance the compliance effort. Let's look at this agent case study. So when we are building the CCF, one of the biggest challenge that we foresee is that how do we propagate it to the engineering teams? Now, we will be doing our side of the work, which is basically doing a lot of communications within the engineering teams, working with the engineering teams. We are embedded closely into the engineering life cycle, but still there will be areas, either we have like many resources that are working with engineering resources across and engineering multiple hundreds of engineering teams across, or we have something called the CCF agent, which will basically, if I take this particular example, you can see that um, if someone needs to know that how do I implement the quarterly access review for my product, right? Uh, the agent, and because we have defined everything within the CCF and customized it based on the information that that person enters and says that, okay, I'm talking about a particular product, uh, the CCF data set will explain that this environment or this product is based on this environment. And then the AI agent will be able to go understand the topic, do an action loop on it, which is like provide the response or understand what the response should be, and then give a very focused output that this is how you should be implementing implementing the control. So it will be almost conversational based, almost like talking to a human. So that person can even go further and ask that, can you provide specific guidance on how to implement, or they can do their own cases, and this will be built on, and the response will keep on going further, understanding the question and responding further. Uh, the best part is that AI agents keep on learning. So as more and more users will use this, the AI agent will learn more. It will have more data sources that it taps into and will get better with each response. So this is how we are seeing the agents coming in and supporting us in the compliance journey. So this is one of it. The other might be if someone wants to see that, hey, tell me what kind of access are there, what privilege access are there in my system. And AI agents, based on the automation platform that we have built, can tap into the evidences or the logs that are coming in and provide the exact evidence or exact information back to the user. So that's how simple compliance can become. There's a huge journey. I'm hopefully not like understating the work that will go behind it, but that's how simple compliance can become, or that's the vision of where we can take compliance with the automation and AI agents. So I'll summarize this around the benefits or the market access benefits of a framework and the AI innovation. So, four key points: increase efficiency for sure. We cannot have multiple cycles being spent on these requirements because they will keep on increasing. Does that mean that the engineering team also keeps on spending 2 hours or 5 hours or 8 hours on compliance requirements every day? That's a lot of overhead. So it will bring in increased efficiency, rapid certification onboarding. So whenever a product is entering a new market or new regulatory space, there's a requirement to be compliant with those requirements, the regulatory compliances. So does that mean that we stop our work and get ready for next 3 months? No, that's where it will help us being ready much more or much in advance rather than like spending months and months. And third, proactive approach. This will help us become proactive. I've seen in with my experience that a lot of organizations act in a reactive way. What that means is that they will sit on it, think that, okay, let's see which way it goes, and then implement it if it is like absolutely important and starts hampering the market access or the business in that region. So we'll not the idea is not to do that and take a more proactive approach, because we already have the data of how much effort it will take, what needs to be done, and we can build on top of it. And of course, like with the AI and all, that will lead us into the agentic AI, sorry, compliance adaptation. So we are on the cusp of a very brave world, and this is what I had to share with you all. So thank you for attending this session. Signing off from Gagandeep. Thank you all.